session. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Mosby.
Present.
Councilmember Vega.
Here.
Councilmember Cordova.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Dirk Starbuck.
Present.
Mayor Janelle Osborne.
Here. Report from closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. The City Council met in closed session to discuss the one item on the agenda of real property negotiations under Government Code Section 54956.8. The Council had a discussion with staff, but no reportable action was taken.
Thank you. Please rise and join me in the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Is Miss Friedman here? Miss Friedman, if you are in the lobby, please come forward for our invocation.
Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me okay? Yes. Thanks. Praise to you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who created us, sustained us, and enabled us to reach this season and this evening. We thank you for the gifts you have given us that allow us to serve our community. For you have given us eyes with which to see a vision of a brighter future for Lompoc. You have given us ears to hear the voices of reason and change. You have given us the gift of smell to take in the scent of our flowers, such as we have, and we honor our city's flower industry. You have given us minds so that we may discern between what is right and what is wrong, to distinguish between stagnation and growth. And God, you have given us hearts to love what we do, to love the people we serve, and to revere you. Please plant within these hearts all a steadfast purpose to work for the safeguarding of freedom, justice, and peace. Bless us with your Spirit. We ask your blessings for our city's leaders and advisors, and for all who exercise just and rightful authority. Grant them insights from your teachings, that they may administer all affairs of our city wisely. Grant to all of those here tonight such wisdom, understanding, and resolve that they may make the best decisions to lead our city in justice and righteousness. Blessed are you, Lord our God, to whom we offer our eternal thanks and praise. And let us say, Amen.
Thank you. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And just a reminder before we move on with the rest of the agenda to either turn off or silence your cell phones for the duration of the meeting. Thank you. We had several presentations that were given elsewhere in the past week. We had a National Child Abuse Awareness Month proclamation done on April 3rd in the Lompoc City Hall courtyard, where you see the pinwheels out front. And we also had a proclamation for the National Boys and Girls Club at the Boys and Girls Club last Monday, April 8th. And over the weekend, we had a proclamation for Arbor Day, as well as resolutions for those honored in the Recognition Grove for Lorenzo O. Gonzalez and Maida Ratcliffe, presented to their families. I will now move to the podium to do a few proclamations, and we will start with the Santa Barbara County Workforce Week. So if you're here for that, please join me at the podium. Santa Barbara County Workforce Week, Lompoc Valley 2019. Whereas the city of Lompoc, unemployment continues to move steadily in the right direction, going from double-digit rate to having a 6.4% unemployment rate as of February 2019. And whereas our community still faces the lack of local high-paying jobs, high youth unemployment, and an increase in violence. And whereas historically studies have shown a correlation between unemployment and a rise in violent crime. And whereas a coalition of organizations made up of local youth, city leaders, local government agencies, public and private organizations, local businesses, and chaired by the County of Santa Barbara Workforce Development Board, will be launching the Santa Barbara County's Workforce Week Lompoc Valley 2019 initiative. And whereas the initiative consists of a series of workforce events, including Get Job Ready Workshop on April 23rd, the annual Lompoc Job and Resource Fair on April 24th, and the Young Adult Jobs Summit on April 27th. And whereas the theme of this year's Workforce Week is unlocking unlimited possibilities. And whereas focuses on the goal of changing lives and reducing violence through the power of work, with a special emphasis in engaging youth in Lompoc, and highlights the Young Adult Jobs Summit as a youth-created and led event which provides young adults with the tools and inspiration to pursue their long-term career goals. And whereas investing in our existing and future workforce is a priority of this coalition and the City of Lompoc, therefore, I, Janelle Osborne, Mayor for the City of Lompoc, California, do hereby proclaim April 22nd through the 27th, 2019 as Santa Barbara County Workforce Week, Lompoc Valley 2019, and hand this to the great group of organizations represented here, helping sponsor all of these events and getting our community not only ready for, but empowered to find those jobs locally. So thank you guys for being here and putting this on.
Well, for those that you know me, I'm actually going to be brief. So, thanks, Dirk. Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Tim Harrington. I'm the co-chair of our committee in support of the Santa Barbara County's Workforce Week, Lompoc Valley 2019 initiative, and a member of the Workforce Development Board Youth Committee. I want to thank the City of Lompoc for this proclamation and recognition of our efforts in support of the 3 events that will take place during the week of April 22nd. And since the mayor was kind enough to tell us what those are, I will refrain from saying it again. What I really want to do is I have the opportunity to have some of our planning committee here this evening that consist of the County of Santa Barbara Workforce Development Board in partnership with the Lompoc Family YMCA, Pathpoint, Lompoc Boys and Girls Club, Goodwill Industries, Santa Barbara County Education Office, City of Lompoc Parks and Recreation Division, KRA and the Workforce Resource Centers, Excel Personnel Service, the Lompoc Unified School District, and the local youth that supported us in developing this youth-led sessions, community leaders and other government agencies, and the local businesses that are also in support. These are the people that actually made all this happen. I just get to be the co-chair. So thank you very much. We really appreciate this.
Now, if I can have some representatives for the Public Safety Telecommunications Week proclamation. Thank you, Chief. So this proclamation is, whereas the Congress and the President of the United States have designated April 14th through the 20th, 2019 as National Safety Telecommunicators Week, and whereas when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of police officers, firefighters, and paramedics is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property, and whereas the safety of our police officers and firefighters is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from citizens who telephone the communication center, and whereas public safety telecommunicators are the single vital link for our police officers and firefighters by monitoring their activities by radio, providing them information, and ensuring their safety, and whereas the public safety telecommunicators have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients, And now, therefore, I, Janelle Osborne, Mayor for the City of Lompoc, California, do hereby call upon the citizens of Lompoc to observe National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week to recognize and appreciate the vital role that the City of Lompoc public safety dispatchers play in keeping our city safe, and do hereby proclaim April 14th through the 20th, 2019, as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. And let me tell you, saying telecommunicators one more time probably would have just twisted the tongue. So thank you to all of our dispatchers who do an amazing job of making sure our officers and our firefighters are safe and doing one of the hardest jobs I think there is to do. And so please call them when it's necessary. Understand the stress they're under, be helpful and direct, and they will do their best, and they are the key to helping get those guys and gals out to us and keep us safe.
I just want to briefly say, I'm going to be brief as well, that we have an outstanding dispatch corps here in Lompoc, and currently we've been facing some major staffing issues, and a great portion of the day we only have one dispatcher. And just to let you know, we handle probably somewhere around the vicinity of 45,000 calls for service for both police and fire. So they do an amazing job, and they'd be here right now, but they're working inside of our dispatch center. So we're really fortunate in the city to have such a dedicated crew. Thank you.
And may I have someone with Donate Life be present to receive the proclamation for California Month Donate Life. So this is the DMV Donate Life California Month. Whereas organ, tissue, marrow, and blood donation are life-giving acts recognized worldwide as expressions of compassion to those in need. And whereas more than 113,000 individuals nationwide and more than 21,000 in California are currently on the National Organ Transplant waiting list, and an average 20 people die each day while waiting due to the shortage of donated organs. And the need for donated organs is especially urgent in Hispanic and African American communities. And whereas more than 600,000 units of blood per year are needed to meet the need in California, and at any given time, 6,000 patients are in need of volunteer marrow donors. And whereas a single individual's donation of the heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, pancreas, and small intestine can save up to 8 lives, donation of tissue can save and heal the lives of more than 75 others, and a single blood donation can help 3 people in need. And whereas millions of lives each year are saved and healed by donors of organs, tissues, marrow, and blood, and the spirit of giving and decision to donate are not restricted by age or medical condition. And whereas over 15 million Californians have signed up with the state-authorized Donate Life California Donor Registry to ensure their wishes to be organ, eye, and tissue donors are honored, and California residents can sign up with the Donate Life California Donor Registry when applying or renewing their driver's license or ID cards at the California Department of Motor Vehicles. Now, therefore, I, Janelle Osborne, Mayor of the City of Lompoc, California, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2019 as DMV Donate Life California Month in the City of Lompoc, and encourage all Californians to check yes when applying for or renewing their driver's license or ID card, or by signing up at donatelifecalifornia.org or donevidacalifornia.org. So just a personal note, I lost my father-in-law, and he donated his organs and has given life to 7 other people. And since that moment, I have permanently had my pink dot on my driver's license. I encourage it as a gift of life to others, and to know that he carries on in them is a beautiful thing. So thank you for bringing this to light and encouraging those to do so.
I'll keep this quick too. My uncle asked me to pick this up today, and he received his kidney transplant about 5 years ago. And because of that transplant, he was able to careen down a ski slope this weekend and hurt his knee. Oh. But that kidney gave him another chance at life, and we're really, really appreciative of all of the work that Donate Life did for him and for all the families in Santa Barbara County. There's still 120 people waiting for an organ transplant, and we hope that this will help all of you to gain awareness, support Donate Life in your community, and get them the organs they need. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll have a presentation from the Santa Barbara County Human Trafficking Task Force on their objectives and preliminary data.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. Thank you for the invitation to give you a brief presentation on the task force. Thank you. Our preliminary data for the last year from 2017 to 2018, and also I have with me Jeff Schaefer, a key partner in our task force, as you'll see, we're a collaborative task force of multiple partners. And I also want to acknowledge Ann McCarthy, who's in the audience from the North County Rape Crisis Child Protection Center, who's also a key partner in the work that we do throughout the county of Santa Barbara. So just to give a little background, we don't want to assume that everybody is familiar with what we're speaking of. We're discussing the issue of human trafficking. A lot of times you'll see this discussed as the modern day form of slavery. You'll see in the next sentence the three words that are highlighted: force, fraud, or coercion. Those are the three elements that are defining human trafficking from a legal standpoint, but also just from trying to understand the elements that need to be present to identify it. It does not discriminate. We've seen young children as young as 11 or 12, teenagers, men and women in this. Just to kind of break it down again, thinking it of as three different buckets, one of the elements of force, fraud, or coercion falls into these different elements of action, means, and purpose. And it's just the way that we can break it down even further, because obviously the federal law definition is not always the easiest to understand and read. So we really try to break it down when we're doing trainings and presenting so that people understand. What we're discussing when we talk about human trafficking are two different types. The most common, I think, that our community is aware of is sex trafficking. It's the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, obtaining of a person for the purpose of a commercial sex act. Again, there's force, fraud, or coercion in that commercial sex act, and if they're under 18, no such force, fraud, or coercion needs to exist as long as there's a commercial sex act being done, because as you all know, children cannot be prostitutes. The other element of human trafficking that we focus on in the task force is labor trafficking. This is something that we're really trying to create education and awareness of through the work that we're doing. It's not something that's covered as much in the media, in movies, because there's not a lot of research or data or even investigations or cases into this. And so really trying to create that awareness in our communities that this does happen, that there is laws that protect people against it, and that there's resources if you've been subjected to labor trafficking. We've seen it in debt bondage where people are forced to work and then they owe through either rent or being brought over to work or for the recruitment fees for working, through involuntary servitude and things like domestic workers, hotel workers, nannies, things of that nature is what we're talking about. So in terms of the human trafficking that we've seen here in the county of Santa Barbara, it's something that I say to everybody, yes, it's happening here. That's why I'm funded fully, 100%, along with 2 other people in the district attorney's office to address this, along with other partners in law enforcement and social service providers. So in 2013, our district attorney, Joyce Dudley, saw the need to form a collaborative task force, and that's when the district attorney's office took the lead in forming what is now the Human Trafficking Task Force. It's a collaborative effort that spans federal, state, and local partners from law enforcement to social service providers to faith-based. And Jeff will be speaking a little bit more of the community involvement in this. In 2015, the county did have our first human trafficking case. Brandon Pitcher, he was sentenced to 38 years to life for trafficking a 16-year-old girl. This was a great example of a collaborative effort between federal partners and local law enforcement, FBI and Santa Barbara Police Department tracked this victim to a hotel in Santa Barbara, found her with this individual, and then he was arrested and prosecuted in our county. From there, in 2015, the Santa Barbara Foundation funded a needs assessment. We really wanted to see what the issue, what the gaps were in dealing with child sex trafficking. And it was very focused in domestic child sex trafficking because we knew that was something that we could extrapolate information from through CWS, rape crisis centers, probation, the juvenile justice system, behavioral wellness, because we knew that they were seeing individuals that they were treating and working with that had these red flags and markers. And so from that needs assessment, that if anybody is interested to see where we were about 5 years ago, that's on the district attorney's website. And it's a great wealth of information to see where the gaps were then and kind of how far we've come now. So back then, we had about 45 confirmed domestic child sex trafficking victims and 80 suspected. Unfortunately, as we've become more aware and done more work in this issue, that number has grown, but so has our capability to respond and provide services. In 2016, we were fortunate enough to apply and receive what's called the Enhanced Collaborative Model to Combat Human Trafficking Grant. And this is a collaborative grant that was applied for with not only the District Attorney's Victim Witness Assistance Program, but the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office. And we were awarded $1.34 million for 3 years. We're coming up to the end of our 3-year period and getting ready to reapply for that solicitation. So the goal of our task force is simple. It's to develop and enhance a multidisciplinary team that implements victim-centered, collaborative, and sustainable approaches to, 1, identify victims of all types of human trafficking, investigate and prosecute sex trafficking and labor trafficking cases at the local, state, tribal, and federal levels, and address the individualized needs of victims through the comprehensive array of trauma-informed services. So like I mentioned, the Bureau of Justice Assistance funds the Sheriff's Department, and the Office for Victims of Crime funds the District Attorney's Victim Witness Program. It is a federal grant, so we are federally funded, which is why we have such great buy-in from our federal partners like Homeland Security, FBI, Department of Labor, helping us in our work here in the county. And I apologize if you can hear the little girl screaming, that's my baby. So she probably hears my voice. Moving forward, just to give you some information, in January 2017 to June of 2018, these are numbers that the task force has worked on, and I want to put that as a caveat because this isn't highlighting the work that CWS is doing, Rise from Behavioral Wellness, Rape Crisis numbers. Some numbers are in here because they're a key partner. But this is just from the work Sheriff's Office, Victim Witness, and some other collaboration from local law enforcement, including Lompoc Police Department, have done in the last about 1.5 years. So with that, we've done about 70 human trafficking investigations, which have come up with 58 potential exploiters, and 31 of those have been confirmed traffickers that are currently being prosecuted in our county. 87 potential survivors identified from those investigations. 57 were confirmed human trafficking survivors, and we have identified over 60 buyers, or Johns as they're identified more commonly, through proactive investigations, and then also citizen tips, law enforcement stops, and things of that nature. So continuing with our objectives for services for survivors, like I mentioned, we're a collaborative effort. We couldn't do what we do without the support of all our partners on the task force. I know that I said I'm fully funded with 2 other colleagues from the district attorney's office, but we're bombarded with work just from an investigation and prosecutive standpoint, not let alone trying to, educate and create awareness, and then also just work with all the other agencies that are also doing this. So just to break it down a little bit more, because we do get questions on this, of the 87 survivors, the majority were female, and the majority were found to be in sex trafficking. We had a minor number involved in labor, which was about 5. Trying to break it down a little bit more, we do get this question a lot. that, they are U.S. citizens. Not all are foreign nationals, as is commonly thought of in mainstream media. We are seeing that it is our residents, it is U.S. citizens, it is here in our community, and you can see that number. 72 were U.S. citizens, 40 being adults, 40 being adults, 32 being minors. And then our foreign nationals, we had about 15 that we worked with. Ethnically, like I said, it does not discriminate. We've seen people from all walks of life, from all different types of vulnerabilities that have become victims of human trafficking. And likewise, in terms of our foreign nationals, we've worked with people from China, Colombia, Honduras, Mexico, Morocco, and the Russian Federation, along with the United States. The number that you'll see there the most in terms of sex trafficking is prostitution, and that is for the adults that we're working with. Like I said, minors are not prostitutes, and so we don't count them in that number. Majority are being identified in hotels, motels, private homes. The other number is, it was an unknown situation. They may have came to us from somewhere other than law enforcement, and that's why we weren't able to identify that because of confidentiality. And again, just moving on to labor, kind of the different sectors in the labor industry where we're seeing trafficking occur. So just to recap, the majority is sex trafficking in hotels, motels. We have had some successful cases of labor trafficking that we're actively working on with our federal partners, just because some of our labor trafficking cases do cross state boundaries, and so we're able to tap into those resources. In working with investigations and prosecutions, like I said, this grant is a collaborative effort, and so not only are we providing comprehensive victim services, but we're also trying to investigate and prosecute traffickers and exploiters, but doing it in a very victim-centered and trauma-informed. So being able to create that culture shift for law enforcement where they're seeing the human trafficking-involved victims as victims and not as suspects or defendants has been a great success for our task force. And we've had great success in really working alongside law enforcement, which was not common in the past. We're with them on operations, we're with them as frontline workers as soon as they identify somebody, to providing victim services immediately. So from investigations, again, no surprise, sex trafficking has been the greatest focus. And the bottom half of that table kind of demonstrate to where we're getting those referrals. The largest being our sheriff's office, being that they're the lead law enforcement agency. We also have other law enforcement agencies, like I mentioned, like yours here in Lompoc, that provides referrals. And then through proactive or patrol, maybe it seems that it's a domestic violent incident, and once they investigate a little bit further, it turns out to be there's a little bit more involved, and they turn it over to the detective bureau to investigate. So to finish, and before I pass it on to Jeff, I just want to leave this on here. If you have any information on reporting possible human trafficking, obviously call 911 if it's an emergency or it needs immediate attention. But the sheriff has a non-emergency number specifically for this and an email, and they could take tips or investigate. And also the National Human Trafficking Hotline. One actionable item that we always like to say is you could always save this toll-free number on your cell phone. If you ever see something, report it. We get those tips as the law enforcement agency through the task force, and we investigate those. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to our partner, Jeff.
Madam Mayor, members of City Council, a lot of you know me under Home for Good, or what was C3H, but I also have a nonprofit SB Act, and we've been a part of the task force for 5 years. And our work is primarily to help with 3 working groups. So there's a housing working group, there's a education working group, and we're going to develop a faith community working group to come alongside the task force and help build capacity to tackle some of the needs that they have that their staff cannot do, which is primarily making sure, if I talk about housing, as you can see from the vulnerability of the individuals that are survivors, they need a specific form of housing with supportive services. So trying to help develop that throughout the county, the proper kind of housing for survivors so they can be stabilized and move toward empowerment. The next piece is education. So what we want to do is educate the entire community, from Rotary clubs to faith communities to businesses to hotel motels, and make sure that everyone knows how to spot it and how to get involved. And then the last one is the faith community piece. We've developed, one of the things that we've developed is what we call a flexible local fund. So sometimes a lot of the funds that needed are needed quickly, and because of the bureaucracy of some of the agencies, sometimes it takes a little bit longer. So we work with all the partners on the Human Trafficking Task Force with some flexible local dollars that we receive through donations to get them to them quickly, whether it's to transport somebody, to help somebody get tattoo removal, to help with dental work. So there's a lot of just immediate, short-term, and long-term needs that survivors have. So that's really our role. So if anyone wants to get involved, they can contact me at jeff@sbact.org, or just look up www.sbact.org and find out how to get involved. And if a council member has if you as a council member have an interest in this as a topic and kind of want to head up our efforts to tackle the issue in Lompoc, we would appreciate that as well. Thank you for having us, and we are here for questions.
Does any of the council have a question? Councilmember Starbuck.
What is Polaris?
Polaris is a national organization. They run the National Human Trafficking Hotline. They do a lot of research as well into what is human trafficking. They put out a lot of resources for us as agencies that are working in it, but also they run the hotline. So any number, any tip that comes to the hotline, they're the ones administering it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much for bringing that information. And again, anyone who is interested in becoming more educated, please contact these two organizations. It does happen locally. We want to help reduce it. Our law enforcement is working very hard in partnership with them to reduce it. So it takes us being aware and proactive to reduce that and be helpful to those that are victims of this. Thank you both for being here this evening.
Thank you.
City manager report, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I only have one item tonight, and that is to remind everyone that tomorrow, Wednesday, April 17th, at 6:30 p.m. here in the chambers, we'll be holding another budget workshop to discuss the deficit and the potential cost reductions. I'd like to see everybody here, well, even more so. I'd like to see the whole place filled up inside and out. So again, 6:30 p.m. tomorrow night here in the chambers.
Thank you. And we'll open the floor for public comment on the consent calendar items. All items listed on a consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be enacted after one motion in the form listed below. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless good cause is shown prior to a council vote. Any items withdrawn from the consent calendar for separate discussion will be addressed and immediately before the second oral communication near the end of the meeting. Please step forward if there is a consent calendar item you would like to speak to. Seeing no one rise, we'll close public comment on consent calendar and bring it back to council. Is there an item anyone would like to pull, or do I have a motion to accept consent calendar?
I'll move we accept the consent calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Starbuck. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilmember Vega. We have a move and a second. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. And that passes 5-0. We have no staff presentation announcements or requests tonight, so we'll move on to oral communications. This is with regards to any city matter, not necessarily on the agenda. If there's an item on the agenda, it is preferable that you wait for the public comment for that. So, opening the floor to oral communications.
Deb Andrews, Mission Hills. I'd like to ask once again that you make the video archives of City Council meeting organized and easy to access. In the past, It was like a spreadsheet. You had city council meetings at the top, and then you had date, agenda, minutes, video, and you could click on whichever one you wanted, and they were in chronological order. Now they're off-site, they're all mixed up, they're not even, the dates are all mixed up, and you can access the toy shopping in the Magic Portal. So I'm not sure why that hasn't been fixed. Another issue that I've spoken about, many people have previously, is the Fallen Heroes Memorial in the park. It is still roped off very shabbily with orange plastic. It's overgrown with weeds and grass. It dishonors those who've fallen on our behalf to keep us safe. There are many ways to discourage patriotism and honoring our veterans, and that's one physical way to show people that we really don't care. It doesn't matter. Don't stand up for your country, because this is what happens. It looks like a garbage heap. I think we should do everything that we can to get that fixed quickly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, City Council members, my name is Sue Copeland, and I'm a 30-year resident of Lompoc Valley. I continue to be here again tonight regarding the conference with real property negotiations during closed session. I want to bring back to your attention that on March 5th, that the blue dot, or pale blue dot, gave a presentation. Following the presentation, City Council, I believe it was Councilmember Vega, made a motion to have the city talk with them, and possibly come back with some information. And I just want to quote what our own city lawyer stated, that I want to bring back, let me say it again, sorry. So the city lawyer specifically stated that the council, and I will quote, needs to bring back an item to consider the next steps in this process. I want to make sure that the council is not getting into the details of what the next steps might be or what the forms are, but we can bring back an item to discuss the next steps, end quote. That was from our city attorney on that night. Now, we've had 3 nights in a row where you've had closed session discussions about this item that isn't an open item for discussion. And I've been talking and bringing this forward to you each time, and I'm very discouraged that this is continuing, and again, no reportable action. Because of this, I have taken it to the district attorney and brought it to their attention. I don't know if they've contacted the city council or the city yet, but we need to be open and transparent in what's happening. Now, part of this, as you know, I'm part of the Lady Rocket Foundation and California Space Center. I am a investor in it. Once I had heard about this other organization interested in pursuing the same thing that we are interested in, I contacted our city manager via email, and he said no, he didn't want to discuss it with me until the MOU was decided upon by the city, which I think is incorrect. I've talked with, also sent a couple emails back and forth about that. May I finish?
If you can do it in under 15 seconds.
Okay, so I contacted you also, Madam Mayor, and again, you say that there is no reason to talk to me at this point, but there are a lot of things that our city needs, and we need to look that our organization is doing, and you won't even allow me to talk to you about it. Only open session here when there can be no discussion and response. Our city definitely needs more things happening here to improve our economic situations, and we can bring that to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, John Lynn, Lompoc resident since 1982. The documents I passed out this evening are excerpts from this September 1999 study, and it talks about the total dissolved solids in our city water wells. Now, I want to tell you this is a really exciting study to read, and I have a digital copy available if anyone would like to go through it, but I'm going to try to save you quite a bit of work on it. So this study talks about the issue we had with TDS, or total dissolved solids, in our well water. And it actually began, the study began in 1962, and it went up through 1999. And it was principally driven by order number WR 8918, which changed the way water was released from Kachuma to refill the Lompoc Valley aquifer. So if you look at the sheet for table 5-6, it shows that increase in total dissolved solids in the Lompoc Valley wells from 1960 to 1995. Page 6-2 establishes the 1995 number at 940, which then makes the 1960 number about 805. They don't have that all on one page, so it's a little reading. With the implementation of Order WR 8918, the TDS was expected to decline from the 940 of 1994. Figure 6.6, which is the graph with all the red on it, estimates that it would decline back to 805 by 2018, which happens to be right now, and 805 was where it started out. But that didn't happen. Instead, the average in the 11 wells of the city of Lompoc today has gone up even higher to 1056, and the city well report's also attached. So the question that can be reasonably asked is, when all that work was done, and this 100-page report was completed in 1996, what went wrong? What was the long-term effect that caused our TDS-F to change? Did they completely miscalculate what was going on, or is there an impact from the treated effluent that percolates from the Mission Hills Community Service District plant? Once again, I would ask you to spend some time reading this. If you'd like the whole document, I'd be happy to share it with you and get the staff involved in looking at this and find out what's happening to our water, because I don't know the answer, even after a lot of reading. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrea Wogsland, and I'm a 2.5-year resident in Lompoc. I live across the street from Ryan Park. I have a son in elementary school that goes to Miguelito, and I've been working for the American Wild Horse Sanctuary out on Halama Road during that time as their development director. The reason I'm here today is to follow up on a comment that I made about a month ago when there was an incident on March 4th, which happened to be my birthday. We were driving to go out to dinner, and about 10 minutes after I passed the Ocean Avenue apartments, there was the unfortunate shooting. And one of the interns that I have from Lompoc High School, who's just a really bright, wonderful person, actually told me about it the next day.
And so I'm taking time out of my life. I'm actually going to be moving away from this area, and I'm sad to do that. But what I want to say a few things before I do go, because I really love Lompoc, and it's been a great place for me and my family. So what I want to say is that all gun violence is preventable. That includes domestic violence, community violence, and suicides. In this particular case, it seems that it was community violence, and community violence intervention strategies are showing great success all over California. And I think that it's important that we look at Richmond, Sacramento, Los Angeles, and Stockton. They have all been successfully employing these strategies, and those communities are safer, and their gun violence has dropped. I think it's imperative that we provide hope and opportunity for those that are caught in a cycle of violence. And last, I think by taking a public health approach, we can address the root causes of these preventable incidents. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Walt Fassold. I'm the current president of the board of the Mission Hills Community Service District. Just wanted to make a commentary on the earlier comments regarding total dissolved solids. Probably the biggest impact on TDS in this region is the amount of rainfall we get. And so when you go through extended drought periods, TDS tends to go up. So I'm just going to point that out. We don't see a relevance of the discharge from the percolation ponds on the impact of the city. And we'll be happy to share data to show that. So that's my comment, and I just wanted to address that to the council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Darrell Tullis, longtime resident of Lompoc, California, mayor, city council members, members of our community. Normally when I come up here, I got something I want to complain about or, make the public aware of. Well, today is no different. All right. And I'm joking. Actually, I'm joking. This morning at about 12 o'clock, maybe about 10 after 12, there was a loud bang on my street on South Locust, West Locust, and a transformer blew up. And I just happened to be standing looking out my bathroom window, looking at the beautiful mountain across the street, and I actually saw this black crow land on this transformer, and boom, it blew up, and normally they will flutter to the ground. Well, this one flew away, so it was nice. But I called the city and told them about this incident, and in minutes, in fact, on my phone, I have 12:16 when I called the city, and at 1:19, the guys turned to me and said, "Check your power, it should be back on." And it was back on. And so I told those guys, I'm coming to city council tonight, and thank them publicly, because we complain a lot about things going on here. So when things go well, I want to come out and just thank those guys. They did an amazing job. It was fast, it was clean. They didn't mess up my car or anything like that. It was great. So I just wanted to come and say thanks.
Thank you, Darrell. Seeing no one else rise, we'll close the general public oral communication, and we'll move back to the agenda. The first item under public hearings is introduction of Ordinance 1669(19), approving request for 5-year time extension for the Burton Ranch Specific Plan Area Development Agreement, and we have Planning Manager Brian Halverson to do the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I have a short presentation on item number 3. We are here this evening to talk about a request for a 5-year time extension for the Burton Ranch Development Agreement. Just a quick introduction, just some past history here. The Burton Ranch Specific Plan was adopted in February 2006. Can't believe it's been that long, but it has. 150 acres on 11 parcels located at the northwest corner of Highway 1 and Harris Grade. You can see the map there of the project location for the Burton Ranch area. That area has planned 476 dwellings, include single-family and multifamily units. Right across the street, actually, we have under construction 44 homes called Summit View Homes, renamed Prisma Hills. The council approved the development agreement back in May 3rd of 2007. That was, when that was originally approved, it was a 7-year term to expire May 31st, 2014. They applied for a 5-year time extension, and that brings us to today. After the First Amendment, that brings them up to May 31st, 2019. Tonight, this would be the second amendment to the original agreement. The applicant is asking for an additional 5 years. No other changes, and I want to emphasize it's real important that no other changes in the development agreement are proposed. It's just the term of 5 years. And the development agreement is consistent with the city's general plan. If this is approved by the council, it would bring them an extension to May 31st, 2024. The Planning Commission also reviewed this extension request on May 13th, 2019, and had a positive recommendation to the council, adopted Resolution 919. And again, that would bring it to May 31st, 2024. And recommendation for an addendum, no changes to the project or environmental conditions, and that's EIR 0201. Want a couple clarifications. Things changed over time, including assessor parcel numbers and just some slight property ownership changes. So when we actually do the final recommendation, if approved by the council, we will go and clean up those items. And lastly is the recommendation from staff is to introduce Ordinance 166919, approving a 5-year extension for the Burton Ranch Specific Plan Development Agreement, and direct the city manager to sign a 5-year extension for this development agreement or provide other direction. That concludes our short presentation, and I'm available for any questions at this time.
Does council have any questions for staff? Seeing none, thank you. We will now open the floor to public comment.
Mayor, Council, Sue Copeland. Thank you for the good presentation with the information. The new homes that are going up right now, the 44 homes, I think the newspaper said that that's going to bring in about $40,000 in property taxes per year to this city. My question is why we would allow another 5 whole years to go when it is we continue to wait and we need more housing. I think that extending in another 5 years is a bit excessive. When I contacted Mr. Halverson back in June or July asking about this property and what was happening. And he said, well, it takes a little time. You know, pretty much what was needed was the agreements with the water district, and that can take some time. But it's been 13 years for them to come up with agreements with the water district. We, as all of us know, we have a dire need with our budget for more income, and I think that it is irresponsible for us to extend to a whole 5-year addition after all of this time. If nothing has changed, there's really no reason to extend it like that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council members, John Lynn, Lompoc resident. You know, I'm terribly familiar with this project, as I know all of you are, and I know that they would start building tomorrow if all the stars aligned. Along the way, there have been a number of issues that were created at the very beginning that have now been resolved. I know they're working to move forward, and just to make it clear to the public, they would start tomorrow if everything was in line, but sometimes these things take longer, particularly on a large and somewhat complicated project, and that's why it's a 5-year extension. It's not because they want to wait 5 years, I guarantee you that. I can see them over there nodding. They would like to start tomorrow. So please vote for this, and let's see if we can't finally get this done. It's the best project we have in the queue at this moment by far. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a developer as a client, Deb Andrews, Mission Hills. It's outrageous that things have to be lined up and it takes 13 years. Are these houses on Mars? This is just unbelievable. I think the city should work with the county, work with the state to undo whatever this log jam is. This is ridiculous. And we haven't heard how much we're going to charge them to hold that land, to keep that land aside. There should be a significant amount of money that they pay to Lompoc to hold that parcel for them. Perhaps we can balance our budget if we charged them.
Thank you.
Hello, Mayor Osborne, members of the council. My name is John Martin. I'm one of 3 property owners and developers that make up the Burton Ranch specific plan. Derek Hansen, representing the Tobes Group, is here. Pat McCarthy and Don Jensen, MJ Land Company, is also here. We collectively own about 150 acres, and that's all but 2 of the parcels that make up the Burton Ranch area. So, as other speakers have said, we are anxious to move forward. The length of time is certainly not due to lack of interest. It's due to many other complicating factors. It's a pretty large project. 400 and some odd housing units is a major project. Significant infrastructure is involved with it, not just infrastructure on our site, but what we call off-site infrastructure that we're expected to deliver. Clearly, the recession got in the way for a long time there, but we've been pushing quite actively to get the project going the last 3 years or so for sure. And we have approved tentative maps. We have approved development plans. We have an approved specific plan. As Brian said, this development agreement it's been with you for 12. It's been with us for 12 years now. But we're not proposing any changes to it. This is not a new deal coming from the Burton Ranch developers. This is the same as it's always been. We're looking for more time to continue with it. So I think, as you can see from the letter you received from Mission Hills, which frankly we're not going to speak to unless you would like to ask questions about it, the last remaining hurdle as we see it is the delivery of water and sewer service for Burton Ranch. If it weren't for that, we're ready to go. So we've been working with the district for some time. We're disappointed to see the letter they've submitted, obviously. But be that as it may, we're here to answer your questions on it. And we hope you'll support the extension as your planning commission unanimously did. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor Osborne, council members, I'm Derek Hansen. I'm with the Tobes Group. As you probably have noticed, I would be a new face to this equation with the Tobes Group. Obviously, there are plenty of questions that everyone has in regards to timing. We all understand the recession. We all understand all the nuances of the negotiation. And certainly, we, as a company, we have had our own trials and tribulations. So please understand, it was not something that was forgotten. We have been in complete communication with the Guarini and Signorelli families. Those are the partners on the parcels that the Tobes Group is representing. I've spoken with all of those family members, and they're excited to be started. And certainly they had their own questions. There's no denying that fact. But we are moving forward, and we are in a much better spot than we were previously. And certainly, you know, the negotiations that we've been going through in regards to water and sewer, they are another trial and tribulation that we will work our way through, and we will make this happen. And our goal is to bring homes to Lompoc. We all know about the RENA numbers. We all know about what our state is currently facing, and we want to be a part of the solution. We certainly appreciate all of the efforts that the city staff, Brian, Jim, have. Their assistance with this has been just phenomenal. There are many issues that they're willing to talk to us about. There are many issues that they're helping us to resolve, and we are pleased to be where we are today. We are literally this close, as John said. We want to get this over the finish line. So please, if you do have any questions, happy to answer those. Happy to dive into any specifics you have, and would appreciate your support of our development agreement extension. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, members of the commission, I'm Don Jensen. My partner, Pat McCarthy, is also here. We're the small component of the Burton Ranch group. We have about, I think about 16 acres. But my partner got so frustrated with not being able to get Burton Ranch going, he went and bought Summit View. So he's also the developer of the 42 homes for the city. So we have been trying to move forward. It's very frustrating with the amount of offsites and the roadblocks that have been put in front of us, not by the city. So we're looking forward to keeping this thing moving, and we look forward to your support tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council, pleased to address this evening the viewpoint of the Mission Hills Community Service District. We have stood ready and able to help move the project forward for many, many years. We offered an extension of a can and will serve that wasn't signed off by the developers. The developers left their development agreement expire and then came back wanting the same terms that they had in the past after letting it expire. So there are some issues and some differences. They aren't irreconcilable differences. There is no need for any major delay on the part of water and sewer services from the Mission Hills Community Service District. I want to be very clear on that. Let me just kind of address some things that, first of all, the document that I passed out, I would like that to be included in entirety on the minutes of this meeting this evening. So I'm going to go through some highlights rather than reading off of a multi-page report. We, as a district, fully support the effort of moving Burton Ranch forward. To do everything we can to enable it. We do not see ourselves as a cog in the wheel on delaying it. It basically can and will move forward, provided we can sit down and work things. Recent meetings we've attempted with Burton Ranch got canceled out, maybe for good reason, but it got delayed. An effort to set up another meeting, which was for this week, either got delayed or didn't get established or responded to, okay? So it's not a one-way street here, and I just want to make sure everyone understands that we're ready and able and willing to provide the water and the sewer services to the city, or to Burton Ranch, I'm sorry. So let me go through a couple of things, and although we're very interested in moving forward, we do have some concerns that we did want to bring up this evening. Part of them are in more detail in the handout that you have, but I wanted to go through some things that go to the Planning Commission report on the 13th of 2019, March. And there were two sections in there that we specifically objected to, which was enabling language to go shop for a different service from someone else for water and sewer. And we do object to that. We asked for it to be removed, and it was not. So we asked for that once again this evening. On the overall, for the Planning Commission, what we see is in a system that's a city that's struggling to get a balanced budget and a lot of economic issues pending, that we have...
If you can wrap the statement up, then we can close out your time.
Okay. The agreement contains language freezing connection fees to 2007, which is a 40% gift as we see it, versus giving today's rates or rates over the next 5 years. There's also concessions for offsets that are in today's dollars or future dollars that we don't think in a time of budget crisis should be extended to the Burton Ranch developers. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve Dietrich, Mission Hills Community Services District. And I'd just like to follow on with the end of Walt's comment there, that the way y'all structuring this thing, it looks a lot like a major gift, and that comes with some other consequences as are described in the letter. I've been a resident of Lompoc for 20 plus years. I came up here voluntarily. I flew. I had a choice of any place I could live, and I picked Lompoc because I loved it. I've tried to do some of the community service things, and I think our community works together when we have a great exchange between our government and our people, and I think we've missed it on this. The notice of the meeting came out late. The planning website had the wrong documents up. It had the old specific plan, not the new specific plan. Other documents have been taken down. I just think that's not acceptable in this community. In 2014, planning cautioned the developer that if more changes occurred, they were going to need to go back and change the EIR. Should they choose to try to change the utility service, there are mitigation measures which are dependent upon delivery of the wastewater to our plant, because our plant recharges your aquifer. So you cannot make the findings that there are no consequences with the language that was kind of snuck in the back of the report, because that would invalidate that. There are a number of other provisions in there which are also changes. I think we've outlined them pretty well in the letter. But the essence of it is we stood by to provide service for 12 years, I think, or 10 years. The agreement was allowed to expire. We've been working hard to get a new one. One of the things is we were told, of course, we didn't expect that you guys would ever get any net fees. We're going to get it all in credits. And so I think before you consider this, one, you need to look at the environmental. Two, you need to go back and look at the finances. If you don't have a schedule of the net fees you're going to get and the obligations that the city has to perform, you're not performing your job. Finally, I think the fire up there a couple of years ago was a wake-up call for all of us that we have very severe evacuation problems up there. Had that day been one of windy conditions, had we not had close to 17 firefighting aircraft immediately available, that fire could have burned all the way to Parisma. Thank you.
Thank you.
Daryl Tullis, Lompoc resident. Something that always bothers me when we have these types of situations facing us. I was a really good math student, and when I heard something was complicated, We put it up on a board, and we went step by step, and we found out what those complications were, and we worked them out. When I hear something is complicated, I want to see what that complication is. And a question I have for you, I heard 2 families mentioned that had a lot of questions. Well, I want to know what their questions were, and I want to know what the answers to those questions are, so that before you consider voting on this extension, do you know what those questions are? And do you know what the complications are? Because if you don't, then you don't have all the information you need to solve this equation. All right? So that's my only question. Because see, we here in the city, we don't know what those questions or complications are. And if it's just the water, it seems like that shouldn't be that complicated for 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else rise, we'll close public comment, and I will bring it back to council. If council has any questions for either staff or the developer, please ask before we move forward on this. I have a question for our city attorney. This discussion is simply a time extension. There is no changes to any of the development agreement other than just giving them more time to finish working through moving forward with our planning department and building department to start breaking ground, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Councilmember Mosby.
There was a question about gifting of public funds. If the attorney could respond to that.
Sure. Like any development agreement, there is a give and take that the parties agree to. What occurred in this development agreement is the developer was given the ability to develop the project under the rules, ordinances, and policies that were in place at the time that the development agreement was approved. And in return for that, and various other benefits that were granted to the developer in this development agreement, in return, in the development agreement, the developer did agree to pay in section 3.03.01 payments to the city for every household in the development that are intended to ensure the operation and maintenance of public facilities around and inside the project for fire protection, police protection, and library services that are over and above the property tax income that would come to the city from this development. So there is consideration by the developer for the benefits that they receive under the development agreement. And for that reason, the development agreement is not a gift of public funds.
Okay. If Mr. Halverson, there you are. There's some questions about traffic impacts, and I assume when the project was designed, it was numbers that were put in place because it was a project there. So when other items on North 8th Street came along, were they all part of the calculation of the build out of this facility?
I believe so, but the topic of environmental impacts were brought up, but really there's been no changes to the project. So the way the project was analyzed back in 2006, those mitigations still stand unless the applicant comes to us and revises the project. And there's been a lot of things discussed, then that would open up some new environmental review, but we have not opened up that review yet.
I'm speaking more specifically to the projects that were built on North 8th Street over the last 10 years or so. When the traffic studies were analyzed, I believe they considered this to be a part of the equation.
Yes, they do, and we work with ATE, and they're always asking what our projects are, and we give them our project list, and yeah, they're always taking into consideration projects that are in the horizon. So yes, absolutely.
Okay. I know I just got this letter, but it looks to me those were the most critical statements. There were some that about the lapse of their agreement. Can you explain to what they were?
Can you clarify
the 10-year term of the development agreement allowed the agreement to expire?
Oh, is this the
public comment that was, yeah.
What page is that, Councilmember?
This is the top of the second page. Over here it says that Burton Ranch failed to perform during the 10-year term of development agreement, allowed the agreement to expire.
Yeah, that's actually not an agreement that involves the city. That's,
okay.
The applicant can speak on that, but that was a private agreement between the developer and Mission Hills, and that's not the one that was between the city and Mission Hills.
Okay, another thing that caught me is they said Mission Hills Community Service District was not provided an opportunity to comment at the Planning Commission meeting. Was that?
No, that's not correct. They did come and they provided comments, so we could provide the minutes for that. But they did speak about some concerns about, as he mentioned earlier, how the project would be served and a couple other things that I don't have, memorized right at the moment. But they did speak. Yeah, I have the speaker slips as well, I think, in my office.
Okay. There was another comment about the traffic studies of this project not including the motorsports project. Is there a complication with that?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
No.
Okay. And there was analysis about police and fire, right? That fire would be potentially from Station 51. Is that, am I correct with that one?
I'd have to go back and look at the original EIR. I mean, a lot of these things are being brought up, and not trying to disregard their memo, but because it's only looking at the term, these issues don't really come up because they're bringing up the original environmental impact report. So I think they're bringing up some issues that haven't been triggered quite yet because it's only the term. So
okay, so by us accepting the term, they'd still have opportunity to come back with these. Is that correct?
Well, the comment period for that environmental document ended a very long time ago, and so we haven't opened up a comment period again for the environmental document. It's done,
Okay.
Unless they change the project. So we can certainly meet with them and discuss, mitigation measures or things that they think that the analysis is not wrong in the original environmental document. But tonight, it's just about the term. So
you believe that it's appropriate to move forward in your professional opinion?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's a great project, and I think we should move forward. That's our recommendation.
Right.
Councilmember Vega.
I'd like to move that we accept the ordinance number 1669-19, approving specifically what we're here for, is doing an extension of time to allow them to put their project together. And I'd like to make that motion.
I'd second it.
Mayor.
Yes.
I need to request that the motion be amended. As Mr. Halverson recommended in his staff report, there have been some changes in ownership of the property since the last time the development agreement was amended. So I'd just like to get a direction from City Council when we come back with this for the second reading at the next meeting, that they direct staff to change the signature blocks at the end of the agreement to reflect the current ownerships of this property, as opposed to what they look like now. Sorry.
That's easy.
And the assessor parcel numbers.
Yeah, okay, so I'll amend my motion to accept the ordinance number 1669, number 19, and with the addition of changing the signature blocks to reflect more of the current ownership.
Thank you.
And the AP numbers, correct?
I agree.
Okay. And that was the second? Do I have any further discussion? Seeing none, let's go ahead and vote. And that passes 5-0. New business, exchange of land to accomplish a lot line adjustment between APN 093-040-040 and APN 093-500-004 to benefit the city of Lompoc. And we have Senior Environmental Coordinator Stacy Lawson for the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. When in 1990, the wastewater property was divided off to create a separate parcel. When that parcel was created, I'm not sure what happened with the property lines. The property lines were drawn such that they extended over the city's levee, which protects the city, and that's the area in green. And also, as the property developed, the development extended onto the city's property and encroached upon our wastewater plant, and that's the area in red. So, in an effort to resolve this problem, because in the interim they've had a whole series of easements to grant this, grant that, reciprocal, everything, we'd rather just go ahead and get a lot line adjustment to resolve the problem, put the property where it belongs, and leave it at that. So, with that, the reasons to do this, it's important to protect the city from flooding, and also our groundwater monitoring infrastructure was included in the private property that's not ours, so we want it back. And the private property's access, parking, buffer around buildings was city wastewater property, so we want to give it back to them. So we had an evaluation by a real estate broker who determined that the valuation of the properties, the green properties versus the red, are basically the same. So it's an even exchange. And what we would like to recommend to the council then is that the council approve the exchange of the portions of city-owned land at 1801 West Central Avenue, APN 093-040-040, that's wastewater plant, for portions of the property at 1635 West Central Avenue, APN 093-500-004, as shown above, and that is a private industrial property. Thank you, and are there any questions?
Councilmember Vega.
Stacy, is there any dissension to this move, or is there any a negative impact where someone has a complaint about the exchange of land, or is everyone on the same page?
No, there is no complaint about the exchange of land, but there is a proposed developments on that property that would benefit from getting their parking back and getting their access drive back.
So there's a positive take on this?
Yes. So it's positive for the city because we get our levee back and access to our monitoring well as our own property, and they get the parking, which is now on city land, onto this private parcel, as well as their access.
So they would be happy, everyone?
Yes.
Right. Thank you.
Ms. Larson, is there a fiscal impact to this?
The fiscal impact, the costs associated with writing up the deed and such will be undertaken by the property owners of the property.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Councilmember Vega?
And the cost is going to be taken by the property owners because of the benefit of the proposed development, is that correct?
Correct,
So they're
because
gonna,
it will help them to get their required parking and the rest of the stuff.
I was wondering how you did that. Yeah. Talked them into paying for it? Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Lawson.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions for staff, we'll open it up for public comment. Seeing no one rise, we'll close public comment and bring it back to council. Councilmember Mosby.
Mr. City Manager, you good with this?
Yes, actually, I've been involved in a number of the meetings with it, and we did go back and forth on, do we require them to purchase one little piece? And then as we looked into it more and we found out, oh wait, our monitoring well is there and the berm is not ours, we had to dig down a little deeper. So once we got to this point, it was a win for both sides, and when they did agree to cover the costs for the any of the documentation and recording, we said that was a good deal for everybody.
Okay. If there's no more questions or something, I'd make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a move and a second on that. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. And that passes 5-0. City Clerk, do we have any written communications?
Nothing more than you've already received.
Thank you. We'll once again open the floor to oral communications on any city matter. Is 2 minutes. Seeing no one rise, we'll close oral communications and go with council comments, meeting reports. Councilmember Vega.
No meeting reports, and I encourage everyone in the public to come to our budget meeting tomorrow. I mean, there is a concern here. We're voted in by districts, but we do represent the city as a whole. And I think our goal here is to work with city staff, but on the other hand, we expect and would like city staff to work with us also to show the public that there's some unity here instead of a third party here, and I think that would go a long ways to us solving this budget issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Cordova.
I don't have anything.
Happy belated birthday. Councilmember Mosby.
Yeah, I want to shout out to my new captain, Martin, and apologize for not being able to make it there. We didn't get our notice until 4:45 on Friday, and already had something scheduled. And anyhow, good job to the new chief for bringing a new captain. That was quick. Like also comment and thank Caltrans and the railroad for expediting fixing that hole on A Street. And I also got notice that they're going to be moving forward with replacing, can't tell you when, but putting the concrete components in there on those train tracks there, as well as working together with the city on the new encroachment permits for planting more trees on H and Ocean. Caltrans is also working on some upgrades at the roundabout to try to make it more visible. I guess, yeah. Some more lighting and some more markers and bigger stripes. That brings me to an issue that of concern. I know we have the budget coming up, and in going through the demands of our commissions, and one thing is our utility commission, and as stated in our ordinance, that the Utility Commission shall recommend and act as an advisory capacity to City Council in all matters pertaining to water supply, water distribution activities of the city operation and city wastewater facilities, and operation of the city's electric distribution system, as well as operation of broadband utility system. And the reason why I bring this up is they're all supposed to make recommendations concerning the biennial budget and the capital improvement plan and capital expenditures. And the reason why I bring this forward to the council to understand, I was at the past utility commission meeting where only 3 staff members showed up at that meeting. There were 5 commissioners there. Definitely nothing was being discussed about the budget, which they are a tool for us to work in our advisory capacity. Now, this ordinance says shall, and it's not happening. I know the budget's coming up. I don't think they have enough time to bring this forward. There were materials that were passed out to the commissioners at that meeting. They weren't made available to the public. Myself was there, as well as one other member of the public. So I'm not quite sure what's going on, but I think it's a serious issue. If those of you guys remember with the old LHCDC and the grand jury suggestion was there was lack of oversight. And there were millions of dollars involved in that. This has tens of millions of dollars involved in this. And we are not getting the advisory capacity to come back to us. So I just wanted to bring that out. Likewise, there's another issue that I wanted to bring out. And for whatever reason, new computers, whatever it might be, but if you go back and you look via ordinance for I'll call it Ordinance 2.16.020, reports and statements from the Management Service Director. And in this paraphrasing, that monthly statements are supposed to be available. And there's availability component to the council. Now, we're supposed to be, again, in oversight capacity. And if you remember correctly, the last time we saw a statement was from September of last year. So we're being challenged to oversee and review a lot of this material. We get fingers pointed at us all the time when things are happening. But I don't know how the rest of you can make decisions. I can't make a decision if I don't see what's in the accounts. And for whatever the reason that's going on, this is a city ordinance referencing this. And we're not getting the information I believe we need to be able to operate. And our job up here is oversight capacity. So I just wanted to comment on that. And I know we can get it fixed. And I just really, we need it. Thank you.
Councilmember Starbuck.
I have no reports.
Thank you. As mentioned earlier, there were several proclamations and resolutions issued over the past week that I attended for. I also attended the swearing of Captain Martin, so thank you so much for identifying a quality sergeant to promote from within. And again, the workforce dates for the week of April 23rd is the Get Job Ready workshop. The annual Lompoc Job and Resource Fair is April 24th, and the Young Adult Job Summit is April 27th. They do have social media, and there was a press release released on it. Information I will make sure is shared also through the city Facebook page so that you can find that information and take advantage of those opportunities in our community. And once again, one more thing, the city manager and I attended the Santa Barbara County School Board annual dinner to help support Lompoc Unified School District in county education. So the final is the reminder, tomorrow's budget meeting here in City Council chambers at 6:30 p.m. Please attend. Please bring your comments, your concerns, your desires as we work towards building the next budget for the next 2 years. I will adjourn the meeting to the regular meeting at 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, May 7th, 2019.